Hey guys, Lytane here, and just over a year ago I talked about a video game that had tank-like controls, cryptic puzzles, and pretty hard combat. What game was that? Resident Evil, of course, and just like when any video game becomes popular enough, Hollywood notices, and they decide to make a movie on it. So today I'm going to have a look at the Resident Evil movie to see if it's worth it. Like I said, this is a movie that is based upon a very popular video game franchise. It was released in the early days of the PlayStation 1 and was considered to be the birth of survival horror. Well, Alone in the Dark is the game that is really the birth, but still, Resident Evil was the game that popularized it. Since the first game, countless sequels and spin-offs have emerged, with each of them telling their own story in the method that that game decides to use. But now, forget everything you actually know about Resident Evil as I go over the plot to this film. Resident Evil came out in 2002 and it tells an original story with elements from the game. We start in a secret underground lab run by the shady Umbrella Corporation as they have been making some crazy drugs and experimenting on living tissue with some pretty horrifying results. One of these experiments is the dreaded T-virus, which a mysterious person steals at the start of the movie, but not before throwing one of those canisters back into the room, shattering it. This is then picked up by the Red Queen, the artificial intelligence system that has been built in to run the place. As the release of this virus is catastrophic, there is only one thing she can do: lock down the lab and kill everyone, of course, just so the virus doesn't get out. Yep, makes total sense. She then releases some nerve gas into the mansion above to knock out anybody up there, just in case it did manage to get out. This is when we meet Alice, though they never actually say her name in the whole film. She has amnesia due to the gas and has no idea what's going on. A special service team crashes in and says that they are going into the lab, which is called the Hive, just to see what went wrong. They bring Alice along just in case she knows something and bump into another guy named Matt who is also trying to break in and find out what happened, and they also find Spence on the train near the exit of the Hive, who also has no memory. It's a creepy place down there, full of traps and unease. As this is Resident Evil, there are also monsters and zombies lurking around. Can the team figure out what happened and get out alive, or are they going to become another Jill sandwich to these zombies? The movie stars Mila Jovovich as Alice, and I think she does an alright job. The amnesia plot that she uses throughout the whole film has been done to death, and it's really cliche, and there's nothing new here for her to really work off of, but as she does go throughout the movie, she does become more badass as she does remember things, which I think is a cool progression in her as a character. As she is vulnerable and confused, us as viewers can relate to her quite easily, and then as she starts to pick up her skills, we really start to root for her as the movie goes on, so I think as a protagonist, she's pretty alright. Eric Mabius plays Matt, who is the douchebag of the group. Well, actually there's a lot of douchebags in this group, so he's one of the douchebags in this group, who's an environmentalist who's trying to find out what happened in Umbrella. He breaks in, and so they have to bring him along because the team can't just leave a hostage in the mansion just in case he gets out, because he does know stuff about him, so he just sort of gets dragged along. And for the first half of the film, he doesn't do anything. In fact, the majority of the film, he doesn't really do much. He does have character growth, which is one of the few characters in the movie that does have character growth, but I feel like his contribution to the film is still a little bit lackluster. I do like the ending with him though, so at least there's something to look forward to as you watch him as a character. Michelle Rodriguez plays Rain, and she plays her stereotypical tomboy kind of badass persona that she plays in just about everything she is in. But at the time of this movie, she was not very well known, and so her tomboy persona wasn't very wasn't overused like it is today. So I can give it a little bit of props and say, like, okay, this was one of the first movies to have it in there, but knowing who she is now, it's just kind of boring to see her do the same thing over and over again. She doesn't get much character growth in the film, and she does get a couple of okay action scenes. The main point of her was really just to be a zombie chew toy, and not in the way that you think either. Kaplan is the tech of the group, played by Martin Cruz, and he's just that, a tech. Then he's a little bit of a wimp, and that's all of the character you need to know there. Colin Salmon plays One, the leader of the group, and he's just as one-dimensional as his name. Ha! One-dimensional. The last main character is Spence, played by James Purefoy, and he's also amnesiac, but you don't really follow him and his psyche as he recovers memory, so you don't really care for him or what he's going through nearly as much. You get a little bit of information about him through Alice, and you know, it helps keep the mystery of who he is alive, but because you don't get to see how he started, what he's going through, and then how he ends, you don't sympathize with him at all, and you just think about what Alice is going through. So I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity that they didn't explore him more. Pretty much as soon as Alice figures out everything, he figures out everything at the exact same time. What a good coincidence that is. But like I said, because you don't spend any time with him, or because you don't spend any time in his head, you just don't really care about him as much. Honestly, most of the cast in this film are just very boring and generic cutouts of real people. Aside from Alice and a little bit of Matt and a little bit of Spence, the characters don't change or grow, and that's a shame. There are more characters than are listed here, but honestly, they're just used to be zombie victims. That's one of the problems with this type of movie. You know that there will be certain characters that are just introduced just to be killed. In fact, most of the characters in the movie don't even have names. How bad is that? Well, sorry. I should say they do have names, but you aren't told any of them, and that's just how forgettable they are. They never spend enough time with any one person to flesh out who they are and why they're there or what they're doing, really, and that sucks because if I cared about these characters more, then I would care if they died. As the first half of this movie is a lot slower paced, they should have spent more time fleshing out the characters and showing their camaraderie. One great example of this in movies is the movie Alien, where the team is just goofing off and having fun near the start. It doesn't further the plot in any way, but it does humanize the characters and you care more about them for it. I really wish something like that, or even something similar to that, was implemented here, but alas, nothing. The plot to this film as well is a little bit of a letdown because it's so simple. Where most of the games in the Resident Evil franchise have many different bad guys, branching storylines. I can understand why they didn't have branching storylines in a movie because that's a video game thing. You can't rewatch the movie as a different character. But I'm getting off topic to myself. The games themselves were more complex. Like I said, there's many different bad guys, bad organizations, different plans, different things happening all the time, and the characters aren't really aware of everything until you get further in the game. In the movie, it's fairly simple. T-Virus bad, Umbrella shady, and what they did bad. There's no anything else. It's just that's it. Like I said, the Amnesia plotline is something that has been done before, and there's nothing new added here. Also, this is a zombie film, which you might think, ugh, a zombie film. But this movie did have one thing going for it as well when it came out, is the fact that there wasn't an oversaturation of the zombie market. Today you got The Walking Dead, you've got like a billion zombie movies, but when this film came out there weren't that many, at least not many that were popular. So you had like the Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that in the 80s and early 90s, but there was a big decade, like a good 10 years, where there wasn't a zombie film, or at least, like I said, none that were big. So when this film came out, it felt fresh, but nowadays you look back and go, man, there are so many classic zombie cliches in this film. It's a little bit hard to watch some of them, like, oh, we'll be safe behind this door, the door opens, and of course there's zombies there, and you're like, oh man, I've seen this done so many times now. But like I said, for when it came out, it's a decent portrayal of a zombie film. It's just aged a little bit. The other main bad guy in this is the Red Queen, and sure, artificial intelligent bad guys have been used before, but this one felt a little bit more original because it has a little girl being the AI instead of an adult, and she makes like, she's a little bit more sassy than some of the other AIs that I have seen before this. Also, the fact that the other things that they verse aren't just zombies. There's the dogs and even a licker towards the end. And to see a zombie dog is pretty cool. You didn't really see that much before as well. And the licker was completely original because they were only in the games before that. So the monsters were a little bit more variety and a little bit more than just a standard typical zombie film. So like I said, it's got some things going for it for when it came out. There are a few things that I want to point out that make me question what's going on in this film. At the start, the T-Virus is released. It's a gas and it spreads to everybody, presumably, infecting them. The Red Queen knows that killing them will turn them into zombies because she references it later, but she does so anyway. Why not lock them in there instead? I guess you could argue that they would try to break out, but still, Umbrella have proven that research is the most important thing that they love, and they would have loved to have studied these people as they got turned into zombies, or as their T-Virus virus was coursing through their veins to see what would happen to them. But nope, she kills them all and actually starts a lot of bad shit. The team then gets sent into the Hive and they have no idea what's really going on, and that's why they're trying to figure out. So okay, so they had a reason to go in there. But why doesn't the Red Queen have an access point outside of the Hive so the higher in command can figure out what's going on in a situation like this? It's really strange that the Hive would be so cut off from the world that nothing gets out, not even in the event that this failsafe had to happen. I would have designed the place so if a freaking zombie virus got out, I will let the managers know. Speaking of that, when the team goes down to the Red Queen, she doesn't tell them what's really going on. Why? She just gives ominous speeches about death and shit, and they have to shut her down. Why didn't she say, hey look, a virus got out and I had to kill everybody to stop it from spreading, so sorry. Boom, that's the end of that mission, no one needs to fucking die. But then the Queen also defends herself with traps, and once again, why? If it was self-preservation, then she could have just given up the data that the team needed and be done with it. Killing them and trying to halt them only made them want to turn her off even more. There is also an antidote, and it was taken outside of the facility at the start of the film, and the Red Queen probably knows that because she's got eyes and ears everywhere. So why not release the antidote before killing everyone if she knows that there is one, or perhaps even synthesizing a new one, because there's a lot of people down there and presumably the antidote stuff would still be down there, or at least a way to create the antidote. There were plenty of scientists down there, I'm sure they could have figured it out, but once again, nope. I think that it's about time that I go into my Lytane persona, because I want to do a little bit of a rant to this film, and it all has to do with one simple question. Why is this movie called Resident Evil? Resident Evil was a game series that a lot of people knew. My girlfriend knows a little bit about Resident Evil, the video games, even though she has never played them. And everything she listed before we watched the Resident Evil movie to do this script, she said things like Umbrella, T-Virus, zombies, big bad guy with the hook who was Tyrant. She also said Wesker, and that's about it. Sorry. Also Jill and Chris. So she had, a good 7 things, just from her basic knowledge of Resident Evil. Only 2 of those things, well 3, of those things are in the movie. The T-Virus, which creates the zombies, Umbrella Corp, which are the bad guys, and zombies. That's it. So you're telling me that this movie that is called Resident Evil, that is based on the video games, has absolutely nothing to fucking do with the video games? Why would you make a movie called Resident Evil and then not have anything to do with Resident Evil? None of the characters in the entire movie are from the games. You didn't even make a cameo of one like they do in the later films. Nope, everyone is a completely original character, and like I said, lots of them don't even have names. The main character doesn't even have a name until you read the credits. Okay, so you don't want to put any of the characters in. Fine, then all of the monsters are cut as well. Sure, you have zombies, and you have zombie dogs, and you have a licker. There is one licker in the entire film. What about hunters? What about the plant things? What about sharks? What about the giant spiders? What about the other things that are in these games? Nope. All of those are cut. They make a reference to a hunter at one point in the film, and that's it. They don't show it. I would have loved to have seen a hunter, that weird frog thing, jump up and decapitate somebody, but they just didn't do it. They spent way too much time building up the zombies, and then they didn't even really do anything with the zombies. I just don't get it. The movie itself is set in the Hive, which is not a bad idea because a lot of the games end up in a research facility of some kind to show that Umbrella is evil. But this movie starts there. Okay, fine. But why show us the mansion? That's just like a big cock tease to say like, oh, this is the mansion, and even one of the main characters is named Spence, and I found out afterwards that he was named after Spencer, the guy that owns the mansion. So you start off in the mansion, and you go, oh man, I can't wait, this is going to be like Resident Evil, and then you see Alice waking up, and you think, oh, maybe she's Jill or something like that. You really don't know, but as the movie progresses, you just get further and further away from the games, and you're like, why? Let's keep going back to the games. The games had complex characters and a complex plot. Every single character in the games has a backstory. They're really smart, they're really gifted, they're really skilled at something or more things. They have, lots of history with things. As the games go on, their histories get more and more intertwined. So the very first time you play as Chris and Jill, they're a little bit more bland, but they do have a backstory. They do have a reason for being there. Even like Barry and the other things that are in the games, they're there. Then as the games progress, yes, they get more complicated and the characters grow more, but even at the start, you have a twist at least. The twist in the movie is hella shit compared to the twist in the games. I did not see the game twist coming when I first played it. Honestly, I probably should have, because it's a little bit easy to see. No, I'll argue that it's not easy to see the game twist, but the movie twist I saw coming pretty much straight away. As soon as the Amnesia story was told and I found out the other guy had Amnesia, and I'm like, yep, I have a fairly good idea what's going to happen. But no, I was right. And so none of the characters are complex. It's true, as the films go on, the one character that does survive this film, Alice, spoilers there, she does get more complex, borderline too complex in my opinion. But here, she's boring. She doesn't have nearly as much going for her as her video game counterpart would have had. So aside from referencing a few words like T-Virus and Umbrella and a few names like Spencer, Spence, sorry they called him, there is really very, very, very little to connect the movie universe to the game universe, and I don't understand why. I know that when you adapt one thing to another that there have to be changes. Like in the game, there was 2 main characters and you had to explore one plot line per character, and there are multiple endings. You can't do that in a film. I understand, but why, if you want to make an adaptation, do you just get rid of everything? Like, you don't even have one of the characters as a star. I just don't understand. Rant over. Go to my happy place. Go to my happy place. That's not to say there aren't some cool parts to this film. The fight with the dogs is one of the more iconic scenes in the film, and it still looks pretty cool to this day. Fun fact, Mila had to train for 3 months to pull off that stunt, and she did nearly all of her stunts throughout the whole film. I also like a few of the deaths that happen as well. Looking at it today, yeah, some of them are a bit cliche, but like I said, when the film came out, they were kind of original, and the best part is that even though this is a zombie film, not all the deaths are to zombies. We have dismemberment, drowning, and the most iconic thing from this film, the lasers. Oh man, that scene with the 3 special forces guys are in the hallway dodging the laser attacks is fantastic, and honestly still holds up to this day. Silly thing is though, if one had just taken a single step backwards, or even 2 maybe, he would have survived, and that always annoyed me, but whatever. Even watching Rain being bit by 5 different zombies over the course of the film and you're waiting for her to turn is interesting. Normally when someone gets bit, they either turn fast, off themselves, or hide it in order to continue with the group before they actually do turn, and then they screw up the group. Here, everyone knows she's been bit but still tries to help her, which is better in my opinion. There's also a few silly scenes like the ones I mentioned before, and this other one where Rain sees one of her zombie teammates and it goes all slow-mo, but no other zombies actually attack her, so she can have this moment, which is honestly pretty stupid. But this movie has quite a few cool concepts and ideas. Even the ending hints at a sequel showing the destruction of Raccoon City and talking about the Nemesis program, which as a kid made me pretty hyped because I love Nemesis and I couldn't wait to see him on the big screen. Resident Evil was hard to pin down, but I will say that it is not worth it, with a big but here, because even though it's not worth it, this movie could have been worth it if it wasn't called Resident Evil. If this was its own original thing and it created its own original universe, I would be a lot more forgiving to this film. But knowing that it is supposed to be based on a game, and a game that I actually like, I can't forgive it. It's also filled with a lot of cliches and filled with a lot of bad one-dimensional acting and a lot of plot points that make me go, why? Like, I listed quite a few of them. I'm pretty sure I could come up with more, but those are just the ones that I thought of at the time. And if that's something that is a problem in your film, if there's so many things that I question plot-wise, you're doing something wrong, so I can't look past it. but I will say there are many great scenes in the film, and if you don't care about Resident Evil, then you'll probably still enjoy it, especially if you haven't been oversaturated by a lot of zombie stuff already. So there's still enjoyment to be had of this film, I just don't recommend it. And oh boy, am I looking forward to the future movies in this franchise. I'm sure that the rants will get longer and longer. Oh dear Lord, I'm not looking forward to that. So guys, tell me what you thought about the original Resident Evil film. When I first watched it, I really enjoyed the film, but I didn't like the fact that it was called Resident Evil, and as the years have gone on, I've just become more and more bitter to it. But tell me what you think. Do you think this is a good film? Do you think it's a bad film? Or do you think it would be a good film if it wasn't called Resident Evil, just like my opinion is? So yeah, let me down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye! Not even in the event that this failsafe that the Red Queen had to do not even in the event that this failsafe the Queen had to do, not even if the